Mic check. Okay. One, two, three. Let's go. Hello, guys. So it's wonderful to see you guys. I'm not necessarily seeing you. You're the one seeing me. So but I want to talk about something. I was taken aback. Is that the right word to use? You know how you've lived an experience of something, but it doesn't necessarily mean so much to you. For instance, now, maybe your regular life is maybe while you were growing up, when you after school, you didn't trek home. You got on the school bus and then you went home. It feels like a very normal thing. And then maybe you look at people who they trek home like, oh, their house is close. So somewhere in your head you've not linked the concept of the lack or the unavailability of funds for some of those parents to be able to make payment for a school bus fare that you had the privilege of having, you know, or every time you came back home, your mom was around or your dad was around or there was a sibling around or somebody around to take care of you. Somewhere it looked so perfectly normal to you. And you don't understand or you don't recognize that there are some people that did not have that privilege. When we talk about now, let me not say we speak from my own personal idea. Um, what personally I've gotten to learn or shape my thought process about what privilege is something that gives you a uniquely different edge over others. Whilst it may look absolutely normal to you, right? It could be something that many people have yearned to have, but they don't have. They don't get it. They don't get it. And it's not for a lack of not trying to achieve those things, but it doesn't come to them as easy as it did come to you. You know, that's what privilege is. And when something becomes so much of a norm to you, you cannot even fathom the idea that somebody else doesn't have it. So to see someone that doesn't have some of the things that you have, it feels like, what are you saying? Is this not how it's supposed to be normally? You know? And then learning that um just like you have it, there are people who have gone through their entire years of life and they don't have that experience. I think there was a video of one one white guy somewhere um doing life hacks, right? And in one of his videos of life hacks, like WC has some has buttons at the top, not necessarily buttons, but yeah, push buttons at the top. Some have the handle you flip to flush down, and his life hack was, if those things are not working, right, you can take a bucket, pour water in the bucket, and turn it into the the basin, and it's going to flush. And someone commented that, imagine what your entire life experience is. Somebody's coming to say that this is a life hack. So you can see the disparity in thoughts of both of these people. And it's not in the case that one is smarter than the other or one is thinking better than the other. No, it's just that they are coming from two different places of privilege. In that one person does not understand what that other person is going through. Like it's a life hack to him. What seems like hell? Oh, I have to call a plumber to fix. For some people, it's like, It's flushing, it's going down. We are good, we are fine. And it's how they've lived over the years. Now, imagine interacting with someone which you do every day and you don't have the same background with them. You don't have the same um, fundamental principles. There are some things that you would say that they cannot relate to. And there's some things that you will hear, there's some things they will tell you and you cannot relate to them. Privilege. Privilege is not only about money. Privilege is not only about money. Privilege is still in relationships. Sometimes people say when gets to relationships, there's a tendency to want to vilify people who have bad experiences, right? Because some people might think that, okay, you're not being very selective, you don't know, your eyes are not open, you're not seeing certain things. But see, if you've met somebody from a dysfunctional system, right, their ideal of what is proper is very different from how you think about it, because they've lived a long duration of their life, right, looking at something that is improper, and taking it as though it is a norm. Now imagine somebody who have come from a place of where they've seen over time them and their siblings fight physically, have to. So when who the highest you've done with your sibling is just quarrel and one person gets into his room, shut the door, and they cry or something, and then they come back and then they're together. And you're interacting with somebody that they go hand to hand. That's booze. They are doing WWE in the house. Right? And maybe in the course of your conversation, we just push out, oh, everybody has their struggles, no family is perfect, even siblings fight. Your understanding of even siblings fight and the understanding of even siblings fight are two different things. So if they take that idea into maybe a marriage or something, the idea of everybody fights is okay. Even if I give you two in the eye right now, tomorrow we can still do as if everything is normal. But that's not normal. But the person does not necessarily know better because they've not been privileged to experience very good upbringing, while you have. So when you're conversing with them, it seems like what you have, it's not necessarily far-fetched, but it looks, you cannot relate. So now this is a laydown of the problem, right? So how do we now build a society of the where the privileged and the underprivileged can meet eye to eye on certain things? I think education is very important. Now, when I'm talking about education, I'm not talking about school system in the sense that primary, secondary, tertiary institution, school, the institutional learning system. That's what I'm talking about. Education in the sense that enlighten your mind, whether you're privileged or you're not privileged. Enlighten your mind. It helps. For instance, one of the things that traveling to new locations do and talking and interacting with people do is that it helps to expand your mind. There are certain preconceived notions we have about people, but if we don't travel and interact with them, we would never truly be able to either confirm those stereotypes or disregard those stereotypes, because we're just dwelling on the information of something we've heard somebody say sometime online, or I don't know, maybe a threat, whatever it is. You're not dwelling on first-hand information, right? So there's this guy on, I see a lot of things on Twitter. I think he's doing an amazing job. I will put his page somewhere around there on Twitter. You can go follow him. I think it's also on Facebook and YouTube too. You can go follow him. One of the things he does is he goes round different states in Nigeria and interacts with people. People, especially migrants. What I mean by migrants, maybe somebody from the south living in the east, someone in the east living in the north, someone in the north living in the west, someone in the west living in the east, interacting with them, understanding, getting their perceptions of life from them. And it's quite interesting because you can see how some notions that people have had about people have changed when they got to interact with them. Right. So back to privileges that we're talking about. You see, educate yourself, talk with people, converse with people, read books. Both the books that were written from people who started from the bottom, now we're here, or those who come from a very different phase of life. You might not always be reading every book because you want to apply it to your life, but you can be reading to understand where you're coming from. When you're able to read to understand where you're coming from, you would now be able to give grace to people when you're interacting with them. I'll give you an example. There was a book I read. The title of the book is Boundaries in Marriages. From the title at the get-go, I was like, so inside marriage, there are boundaries. Interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't have that thought process. Inside marriage, there are boundaries. And I began to read the book, and it was a wonderful book. I gained a different perception about how to live with people, be united with them, but still have them maintain their individuality. And it's quite interesting, honestly. It's quite interesting, honestly. So when you read, you educate your mind, and as you educate your mind, you have a different perception. Not maybe not different though, but you have an upgraded perception about life. So that is one. Educate yourself, right? And in the education itself, we talk about traveling to different places. Okay, so I want to talk about speaking to people, interacting with people. See, interacting with people helps. Sometimes you have a preconceived notion. I hate to bring this up, but unfortunately, is what is prevalent in our society. We have very woke ideas going on. We have very feministic ideas going on. We have very alpha male ideas going on. Some of these useless terms going up. And when you focus too much, when you dwell too much on things like this, you begin to live in an echo chamber. And because you've not experienced the good side of that other that other group that seems like they are not competing necessarily, but they are opposing you. You take these preconceived notions into every single relationship that you have, and then you just make a mess out of it, right? One of the things that help is interacting with people with an open mind. I think this should probably be having an open mind, not interacting with people. Having an open mind, interacting with people. Not everybody that turns you down do so because you're a human. Not everybody that rebuffs you do so because you're a man and nobody cares about your feelings. Have an open mind. There are things on deeper levels that could be the reason why your interaction with people don't go well, right? And it's not necessarily because of your biological makeup, right? So bringing that back to privileges, right? So because one has not been privileged to have very good experiences, let's say as a guy now, right? Let me speak from my POV. Let's say I've had terrible relationships. Just imagine all of my relationships have been terrible with women. Let's imagine that. That's not the case, obviously. Well, that's not the case. I'm not say obviously. Even obviously, you don't really know me like that. But that's not the case, right? But let's imagine I've had all my relationship with women terrible from the jump. Let's imagine it's been terrible, right? And I take that preconceived notion that all women are terrible towards men. I'm going to have issues when I relate with people. Not only in the dating phase, right? Let's say I have a client, right? Because I do structural drawings. Yes, I will say my business every opportunity I have to say my business. Anyway, I do structural drawings, right? So let's say I have a client or someone who I'm interacting with, somebody needs drawings, and let's say that person is a female, and I take the idea that women don't treat men right. She could be saying a whole lot of things, right? But somewhere there, my preconceived notion, coming from a place that I have not been privileged to witness relationships with the opposite sex that have gone properly, I could take that and interpret every single thing she's telling me with the idea that women are not charitable to men. And that would not form the base of all of our interactions. And I would be dangerously wrong, because maybe in the pool of our conversations, I could come off as arrogant. Yeah, that happens sometimes. Maybe in the pool of our conversations, I could do one or two things that does not necessarily sit well with her. But because of how she responds, I will not take it that, okay, women are not charitable to men at all, you know. And then when that now forms the basis of the relationships, our interactions, right? One of the things that you would clearly see is that we're not going to have a good time, in the sense that I'm going to be very difficult for her to work with. I might be countering every opinion she has, and she wouldn't want that. She's paying for XYZ, and she doesn't want to be getting extra feelings on top of that. You get, so that's how you can approach situations like that, right? Why I use the term privilege, not bias, is this: it's privilege because you don't detect how people um you don't detect how people interact with you, right? Yes, there are ways you carry yourself, and certain people are not going to be around you for a very long time. But from the jump where I'm interacting, or when you're interacting with people, there's nothing really about you that will say they won't disrespect you. Don't lie to yourself. You are putting yourself in a place where you think, because of how you present yourself, somebody would just automatically not have preconceived notions about you. It's not true. Everybody has different upbringing. That's the privilege. Everybody have different experience with people. Everybody have different, so it's a privilege when you go through life and people are charitable to you. It's a privilege, right? So now, for those who are very privileged, in the sense that they see, when you're privileged, you would know. As you interact with people, when you're privileged, you would know. Because sometimes you hear some things and you're like, this is wild. This is crazy. How can somebody do this? Why would somebody do this? XYZ. You know, for instance, now you look at the Nigerian situation now. Somebody who has not lived in Nigeria, right? Let's say you've lived in a place with a functional society, maybe a place like Singapore. Now, you've lived in a place where you're used to seeing government do the right thing. Let's use a place like China, where they have laws that if a politician goes and you steal the commonwealth of the country, right, they're going to take you out. So, and you live around that period. So you're used to the idea that the government wants to create a functional system, right? And you now interact with somebody telling you that one of the first things the leader of their country, within the, I think it's within the first 100 days, or 200 days of his days in office, was to buy himself a yacht, a presidential yacht. It becomes crazy to you, because they're like, so what do people now do in that in that situation? Do you get? Because of privilege, because you can't relate. You really cannot relate. You're like, so with all the bad rules and everything, it's a yacht that was the biggest issue to him. But you get the idea I'm coming from. So it's about people who are privileged, right? So we are social beings. We would interact with people of different climes, right? So what do you do? Let me not say what do we do. Well, what do you do? What do you do when you're interacting with people, or you've noticed over time that it looks like you have something that most people don't have, right? Try to extend grace to people, right? Try to extend grace to people. I don't think there is anybody that look at their life and they want their life to be terrible. Nobody does. Try to extend grace to people as much as you can. Be understanding. As much as you can, be understanding. Be open-minded. Also, keep in the back of your head that you don't always have to agree with someone to be able to live with them. You don't always have to. You can, even when you cannot come at a place where you're like, okay, this thing you're saying is right. We're always going to have different opinions about different things. That's the beauty about life. Two people can look at two things and see different things from it, right? Of course, there are some things that are objective or that are objectively true, right? There you have objective truths. In fact, I put out um a post on Medium recently. I'm going to put it here too. The link is going to be in the description as well, about subjective morality and how it's a hoax. Right? It's going to be an interesting read if you can do that. Yes. So I think it's going to be objective truth. Like for instance, now you look at me. It is objective that I'm wearing the glasses. My shirt is blue. It's objective that my skin is melanated. You know, those are objective truths, right? But there's some things that our side could be a bit different. Maybe one person could be very liberal in thinking, one person could be very conservative in thinking. Maybe in choice of religion, you know, certain things, taste of food, different things, different things. So extend grace to people, right? Try to understand where they're coming from. I've learned over time that it's I would want to understand where you're coming from. I don't necessarily have to agree with you, but let me understand what is fueling this thought process, right? So after I've understood, if in interaction I understood, I've gotten to understand where you're coming from. I can then tell you, okay, I understand where you're coming from, but you're wrong. Maybe you're getting your facts wrong, or something is being misinterpreted. But regardless of where we fall on the climb, does not mean that I have to now point to you and say you are I hate you. Of course, there are certain things you see and you know that somebody is being disingenuous. Maybe you in your interactions with somebody, you've seen that over time they are intentionally distorting truths to to suit a particular narrative. That's a different thing. But when you interact with somebody that, based on their level of privilege or their interactions with people, they've not been privileged to witness certain things that could be better, or they've not expanded their mind to see that certain things can be done differently, right? You can engage these people in conversations and try to see a line where you can agree on, right? And if you don't get a place where you can agree on, you don't necessarily have to do anything wild. Just keep your distance. I mean, they're other human beings, right? So yeah, this is all for now. If you're privileged, recognize your privilege and extend grace to people. If in some areas you're not privileged, right, expand your mind. Read, talk to people, interact with people, right, gain fresh ideas, new ideas on different topics, and I think that helps. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Let's hope the next video does not come in 4 months. So 6 months or a year. All right. Take care.